what does he know about Christianity? Basically nothing.
Lex Fridman sat down with a historian to discuss Jesus and the impact he had on Rome.
Interesting, powerful people come together and make history. And he was crucified under Emperor Tiberius' rule.
Yep.
Why were the ideas of Jesus seen as a threat by the emperor?
There's this very famous letter by a guy named Pliny, who was a Roman governor of a province in the east, and he has the habit of writing letters to the Roman emperor at the time, who was Trajan, every time he had a problem with being governor. And so this is great. This is the two highest governmental officials in the Roman world sort of hammering out policy between them, right? The emperor and one of his governors. And so this is about 100 years, 100 AD about. And Pliny says, hey, emperor, I had this issue. I had these people come before me called Christians. I don't quite know what to do with them. What should my policy be? And here's what I know about them. And what he knows is almost nothing. I mean, it's this almost comic, like garbling. And, they have this weird thing where they get together on some day of the week and they sort of swear oaths to one another not to do bad stuff, which is, of course, his garbled understanding of the Ten Commandments, And then they have breakfast together and they eat food, and this is communion, but he doesn't get that that's what's going on. And so he's really ignorant. But I think that the broader point is, okay, this is one of the best educated, best traveled Romans who has the most experience in the empire, has been all over the empire. And what does he know about Christianity? Basically nothing. So if one of the best educated, most widely traveled guys really doesn't know much about them, that kind of suggests that not many people did at this point in time.
At this time, it was a fringe movement that really did.
Very fringe. I mean, it was one of, hundreds of little mystery religions the Romans sort of thought of them as. And these are, religions that have some sort of revealed knowledge and that make more personal appeals to people. Now, stepping back from this in a broad way, I think you can say that Christianity really was different in some ways and had some things that maybe the Romans should rightfully have viewed as a threat.
What I want to do here, disclaimer, I'm not a historian. Gregory Aldretti, I think is how you mentioned his last name, is a historian. So I'm going to look at another historian, Larry Hurtado, who wrote a book called Destroyer of the Gods. And what he's trying to showcase is, well, you have some Christians that will overemphasize the differences between Christianity and some of the Roman mystery religions. On the other side of that, you have scholars that try to overemphasize the similarities between Christianity and these mystery religions. And still another pagan writer of the early 2nd century, we get a similar impression. Pliny the Younger, a friend of Tacitus, was sent as an imperial legate to Bithynia Pontus in about 110 AD. Okay? During this time, he wrote to Emperor Trajan, writing to Trajan about an investigation to denounce an investigation of people denounced to him as Christians. He claimed to have no previous experience in the investigation of Christians, which, of course, is indirect indication that such official actions were already taking place elsewhere as well. So his negation of not having any previous experience in the investigation of Christians is actually showcasing that this was taking place elsewhere, right? So when you click on this citation here, it says, Pliny's claim not to be sure of how Christians should be handled seems to be a bit coy. As Horo observed, Pliny seems to have been fully confident in the actions he took. Its only possible uncertainty being how to handle those who had once been Christians, but now renounce their faith. He says that he first gave them 3 opportunities to renounce their faith, and if they steadfastly refused, despite his threats, he either ordered their execution or, if they were Roman citizens, had them sent to Rome for further trial. Moreover, Pliny reports that he also tortured a couple of Christian women about what Christians did in their gatherings, learning from them only that the Christians met early on a fixed day to chant a hymn to Christ as to a god. Gregory also mentioned this in the conversation. He also predicted that his firm actions would stem a spread and restore the revenues of the pagan temples that were almost deserted, along with celebrations of the traditional rites of the gods. So one of the bigger sticking points when Christianity comes into the scene is that the pagan temples are losing money because Christians are persuading people to stop worshiping the false gods. This is one of the reasons why the Romans were so against Christians, because unlike the Jews at this time, and I guess even now, so then, Christians were actively trying to proselytize. So they're converting people from worshiping pagan gods to worshiping the one true God. So they're losing out on money. And he, remember, he works for the Roman emperor. So that doesn't work well. Clearly, Pliny regarded Christians as comprising a problem significant enough for him to take such strong actions, torturing Christians for information, demanding that those accused apostatize, and handing over for execution or further trials those who refused to comply with his demands. But it's also important to note that the response of Emperor Trajan to Pliny's letter was essentially an affirmation of Pliny's actions. So he wasn't necessarily asking for advice in a sense that we think of it today. It was more of like, hey, I affirm or I endorse the actions that you're taking. He agreed that those accused and convicted of being Christians were to be punished unless they recanted and demonstrated this by worshiping our gods. It's interesting to note Pliny's claims that there were numerous Christians in Pontus at that point in various towns and villages, and that the growth of Christianity was having a markedly negative effect on the institutions devoted to traditional deities and the economic activities associated with them. Of course, Pliny may have been exaggerating a bit, but it seems to me quite plausible that the social and economic effects of the Christian withdrawal from the worship of the gods, or simply the fear of such effects, may have been at least one cause for denunciation of Christians to Pliny and likely to other local officials. In ancient Rome, there were occasional repressions of other religious groups deemed foreign and or guilty of some particular offense, but these tended to be sporadic and of short duration. For example, the ISIS cult suffered repression in Rome itself several times, but in each case, it was allowed back into the city at some point thereafter. There were also cases where Jews were expelled from Rome, but in each case, after a while, they too were allowed back. There was not anything like the repeated and increasingly hostile stance taken by the Roman authorities against early Christians. That Jews themselves typically abstained from worshiping the gods was viewed by pagans as an ethnic peculiarity, but early Christianity, because it was programmatically trans-ethnic in its appeal and more aggressive in attacking what are called idolatry, was a new and more serious danger. Roman jurisprudential practice, though not yet formal legislation, was being shaped somewhat in response to Christians. So again, I'm just trying to show a different perspective from another historian, showcasing how the reason the Romans were so antagonistic towards Christianity was because it really did challenge a lot of the way that they approach things. And this charge that it doesn't happen until much later doesn't seem to be supported by the evidence that we do have. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.